Greetings, fellow inmates of 161, Fury 161. This is Jones Cat 79, aka Chris, joined by my usual co host, Derek, aka Dark Neon.
Through me you passed into the city of woe. Through me you passed into eternal pain. Through me among the people lost for aye. Just as the founder of my fabric moved, to rear me was a task of power divine, supremest wisdom, and primeval love. Before me things create where none save things eternal, and eternal I endure. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here.
Ah, thank you. Is that Dante's?
Yep, it is.
Dante's Inferno. Yes, and what very appropriate given how we're about to jump into the Inferno of where everyone says the series kind of took a turn for people. So, Rumor Control, here are the facts. Over 30 years ago, 20th Century Fox decided to pursue the continuation of the Alien series after the successful Aliens. The writing process was not so smooth, to put it delicately. So this version went through many drafts. Many directors were offered, many turned down. One up and coming fellow did take the prospect, but found the process to be very, very arduous. Being 27, he was looked down upon by some of the elder staff and producers, and everyone tried to support him, but a lot of meddling in business meetings and stuff ended up interfering with his creative process. They had a release date to meet. They they couldn't have pushed it back. They wanted to meet the release date in 1992, as is always the case with all these type of sad productions where it was more about meeting a date and fulfilling a quarterly than actually giving them a chance to work on anything. I can't think of any other movie recently that's done that has gotten another look because of executive decision meddling. Just week. But yeah. So yeah, we're gonna talk about Alien 3 and its trouble production. Which you know what's funny? As a kid, my first exposure to Alien 3 was actually the Super Nintendo game. No surprise. I never actually played it, but you would see the Jurassic Park box and the Super Mario box, and what's that creepy box with the green tint and the little curled up snake looking monster on the front that says Alien 3? That and T2 were like on all the game magazines that you'd find from Acclaim. Yes, that Acclaim. The guys related to the Smiling Rainbow of Death, LJN. Speaking of which, James Rolfe did make a very funny episode based off the game of Alien 3 for the NES of all things. That they were still making NES games well into 1992. Ain't wrap your head around that one.
He mostly made it just as a little side pitch for his other running series, Monster Madness.
Oh yes, that's another great thing to watch. But yes, that was my first exposure. I watched it on TV eventually, and I got the tape, and I was always fine with it. But I do remember I'm bringing up this book again, the greatest sci-fi movies never made. It has a whole section on unmade alien movies, and in fact, the chapter's called Alienated, and they particularly talked about Alien 3, where this sentence will always stick with me. Now, Aliens was a success, but however, the process to make the script for Alien 3 was much more painful than John Hurt's chest bursting process. I went, oh, oh. Yeah, and it talked about all the possibles. I mean, the reason I picked up that book was basically because I was interested because it had a specific particular section on Aliens versus Predator, which almost got off the ground 30 years ago in 1994. Almost. I mean, hell, that's why they made that Capcom game to kind of tie in with what they were going to try to do with that Aliens versus Predator movie. But alas, it fell apart, and Resurrection was pursued instead. But that's a story for another day. In fact, I might have to look into those unmade AVPs before we got to eventual Resident Evil director Paul S. Anderson's crack at it. Which I found someone who said they found AVP 1 worse than AVPR just due to the fact that they themselves have a personal hate boner for Paul S. Anderson.
Ugh.
And I go, I think you'd be all, give me Anderson any other day. He doesn't have Mila in this one. It's tolerable, right?
At least he also put the actors in the suits for the creatures.
Yes. On top of that, let's not forget this is the guy who gave us Mortal Kombat. I love how we have to talk about how Resident Evil and all these other movies are kind of define his career, but not forget, this is the guy that gave us Mortal Kombat, who people to this day still hold as a standard for video game movies, even if it is a little campy in some people's modern sensibilities. But anyway, getting sidetracked here. Yes, Alien 3's writing process went through some drafts. I remember reading about these drafts. And in fact, I thought it'd be a little fun to go ahead and actually send these proposed drafts to my co-host here because I'm sure he's probably never heard of any other version of these Alien movies other than the version that we got, right?
Hmm. All right, let's see how bad it gets.
All right, so hold on, I'm just gonna send it through here, and then I'm gonna send it to us. Do you have your Discord open just to ask? Okay, so sending. All right, so this was not a full script, but this was an idea. One of the ideas was to have the xenomorphs invade Earth, and at one point they would fuse into a giant alien that ends up wreaking havoc through New York. Sounds like a great video game scenario. That was as far back as Aliens being made, so they had that idea. So who
So I'm
knows?
guessing this is what the teaser trailer was trying to go for.
Yeah, get more on that. And then there was another version where they end up. I don't know the details, but this is the idea had Ripley and Newt like being stalked by an alien on a Blade Runner esque future planet, which would have been interesting to see, but probably not cost effective. So, the first real major draft is William Gibson's draft, as I call it, the Cold War one, because this was written during the late '80s, and the idea would have been that there was the Sulaco would have flown into the United People's Protection Plate, the UPP. That's the Communist Front that is against the company. They would have picked up the alien by accident because they would have the Sulaco violated the treaties by flying. It's a warship flying into a neutral zone, so to speak, and they end up accidentally setting off an alien on there. Somehow, an alien had grown from the remains of Bishop's lower half, like an egg popped out of his tube, and one of the poor commies gets a facehugger. They try shooting it off him, which results in the acid causing the fire that led to the ship firing a pod that was eventually fired onto a nearby station, Anchor Point. In this one, they would have picked up the pod. They would have had Bishop, well, the lower half of Bishop, because the upper half was taken by the commies, and they would have found out that these guys were able to isolate the. No, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is sending some people right away, really fast, to this anchor point station in the neutral zone because they're interested in the debriefing of the Sulaco. And in that one, they do end up finding pieces of the alien on Bishop, use that to make their own little base alien pathogen, the very DNA of the thing. Lord knows that can go in only good places. And at the same time, the space commies are also discovering the alien. It's kind of becoming a sort of space, space arms race, so to speak. And eventually, this ends up resulting in a breach. And this is the part I told Derek was a real doozy that, this would have made something dear to me. It's people who know my work know I'm very into the concept of transformation. There was going to be an alien virus that turned people into xenomorphs that would burst out of their husk of skin.
Huh.
Yeah, and on top of that, yeah, and it would have been like the thing. You would have been like, who got infected and who didn't. Now you're probably thinking this all sounds great, but what about the survivors of aliens? Well, like I says, Hicks is primarily the guy trusting the story. Ripley is still in a coma in her cryotube, barely lucid, so he keeps her under observation because of Weyland-Yutani orders. But Hicks keeps wanting to see Ripley. Newt, thankfully, does have family living somewhere in Wyoming or somewhere from Earth. I'm pretty sure that the people who were the parents of the Jordans that got sent off to Acheron. But yeah, but she at least got to be sent off over there, and she was, gave Ripley a heartfelt goodbye, even though she was sleeping in the tube, and what asking Hicks if she'll ever wake up again. Now, this was done because Sigourney was already a little bit gun shy about coming back for yet another one of these. And one thing that kind of strained her relationship with the past execs is the fact that they shot a lot of great stuff with her and Jim, and they told them to cut it out. And she thought some key parts of Ripley were cut out. Namely the daughter scene and more scenes of her interacting with Newton. All that. Basically, the mother storyline that she was really drawn to in the script was left on the cutting room floor. And she thought that was a little bit like, oh, okay, so that's how it's going to be. So I think she did ask him, if you're going to bring me back, either kill me or like find a way to like have me not be in it too much. So that one had her be jettisoned during the emergency once all hell breaks loose under Hicks's orders. So Bishop has his legs back. They repair new legs. And what's funny about this version is Bishop's a little more chipper. He's always making observations that are obvious. If anything, I would compare his comedy to Vision in the MCU, where Vision would like say something that everyone go like, "Yes, that's the point." Hell, there's a funny line in it where Hicks asks, "Were you always this annoying?" And then he says, "Private Hudson seemed to enjoy my conversations," to imply that there was a long thing between him and Hudson. So yeah, so like I says, so there's an actual xenomorph running around along with this hybrid xenomorph. The other people who were infected either killed themselves or were frozen, and it ends with a zero G fight, and they end up getting saved by one of the surviving because they end up nuking a whole station to get rid of the xenomorphs, and they destroy the aliens on the space station, and the space commie ends up dying from radiation sickness in Bishop's arms, but Bishop says that now man has a common enemy. They will now be united. The USC and the UPP will be able to join forces because now they have one thing. Because it'll no longer be an arms race or neutral zone. It'll now be, humanity as one against it. And then Bishop's last question. I always remember this line because it always said this. Bishop asked, "But who will be victorious in the end, man or alien?" And that would have been the cliffhanger. That would have basically been Mall. It was a giant station called Mall World, and that it was abandoned, and then like I said, it turned into an anchor point station. And yeah, that version would have had Michael Bean's Hicks taking over as the lead, but I guess they were like, well, Sigourney and everything, so that I'm trying to read the reasons why the mall. They went through several drafts with the Mall World concept, and thankfully William Gibson's version got turned into a wonderful audio series on Audible, and also there's a comic book that adapts it, and now there's going to be a novel of the unproduced script. So yeah, like I said though, it was genetically altered xenomorphs, xenomorph virus, and the fact that Ripley is minimally in it, but Hicks and Bishop would have taken center stage on that one.
Why
So
didn't we get that one? That sounds a hell of a lot better than what the fuck we got.
I'm trying to read why it fell apart. Well, it changed the nature of the alien, and the second draft is the one that talked about featuring less action, fewer human characters, and far fewer xenomorphs. Instead of bursting, a populated space station housing a small contingent of Marines was mined by a skeleton crew. It was the presence of two xenomorph drones on Sulaco when it arrives on Anchor Point. People say, where did that come from in that other version of the script? And
I mean, to be fair, with like changing the whole alien thing, the fact that these aliens are constantly engaging with humans, let's remember there's also this thing where we humans have this funky thing where inbreeding can lead to weird effects, and mixing human and alien DNA constantly over and over, like something is bound to happen. Something is bound to evolve out of this equation.
So even though nothing got used from his script in the end, one thing that was present that prisoners and UPP people would have had barcodes on the back of their head, and some of the scientists would have been from the United People's Front would have been wearing transparent clear plastic over their robes, kind of like what we saw in those surgeons at the end of Alien 3. So some parts still survive through. Next version. This is the one where I think the Eric Redraft, the guy who wrote Near Dark and The Hitcher. He was brought in when Rennie Harlan, the director of Nightmare on Elm Street 4, was brought in, and he was very interested in directing this. But he wrote a version that they weren't too crazy about, so they asked this guy, who was just hot off of Near Dark, to write it. And he admits himself this was kind of a junk script he wrote out in like a couple of days versus full treatment. And this one opened up with everybody being dead. When these Marines find the Sulaco, they find eggs in the broken pods and a bloody name tag that says Ripley. And then they get jumped by the aliens, and one of the guys gets like a spine, the tail through a vital area that wakes up from a nightmare. And he's like a vet that's stationed, stationed somewhere that is eventually developing like alien experiments. But that one would have just had everybody die from the last one. So
So basically, it's all around fuck you to
yeah.
everyone.
So what's funny about this one is it has some crazy ass moments. The biggest moment being that the xenomorph pathogen that affects people in terms of the xenomorphs eventually starts affecting inorganic material, and at one point the entire space station turns into a giant alien trying to eat the escaping ship. But they nuke it.
I mean, considering Giger's art and designs and inspiration, like organics becoming fusing out from machines. I don't even know. I'm trying to defend this. This sounds fucking stupid.
Yeah, so they're on a space station called the North Star, and like I said, the aliens end up on there. So there's a bit where they find out that there's just some uh, genetically modified aliens, and there's one funny bit I love here. Besides the whole, oh yeah, so there's a bit dude that recreates exactly the kill me scene where his supposedly dead team from his nightmares actually because he thought they were all killed by the alien in that thing were still found alive and working for a shady corporation here, and he ends up finding some of his old CEOs like cocooned on the wall, basically repeating the Dallas kill me scene, like word for word, because at that point it hadn't been seen. No one had seen the famous cocoon egg scene, and the there's a part where the bad guys get killed when the acid blood reaches the station hall, and the aliens end up jumping outside. This would have been the one that had a big zero G fight in the end. So yeah, I'm sure they turned it down only because of the junk script, but also because it would have been too expensive at that time to do zero G fighting. I'm sure nowadays they could probably make that. I wouldn't be surprised if Romulus has a bit of that. But the bad guys end up getting shoved out and decompressed violently. Like, as the writer described it, they go like red balloons just in space of blood and bone. And it would have been the most violent scene in an Alien movie had it been kept. Yeah, so it turns into an giant amorphous xenomorph creature. And they blow it up with the nuke. And they drift in space as a rescue ship arrived. But he said that Brash's Red screenplay has been largely ridiculed since its release. Even Red has disowned it, calling it a piece of junk and claiming it was far removed from what he had intended. The result of frantic and confused studio pressure. It does contain some noteworthy elements that would make it way into later films. Most significantly, it was the first of Alien 3's drafts to propose maybe killing off any surviving characters from the previous movies at the very beginning. This plot point would ultimately be in every version of the script produced for the third film and become the key aspect of the movie made forward, becoming a major point of contention for fans, it notes. However, Red gives an explanation for where the xenomorph that kills Ripley, Newt, and Corporal Hicks in terms of the eggs may have come from. The most obvious problem with this script is its curious plot holes. Like, they call the North Star the Sulaco space station, even though the ship is called the Sulaco. He has a cybernetic arm, and they use contemporary weapons like Colt 45s, M16s, and machine guns, even though we've established knives, sharp sticks, sonic ball breakers. No, they would have been back to using good old fashioned, antiquated Earth shit. But I guess you could argue that this is a far flung, redneck space, so maybe they only have access to like, old fashioned firearms. But that would have been a downgrade to go from, badass smart guns and pulse rifles to good old fashioned pistols and stuff. But yeah, the script is violent even by the standards of Alien series, with numerous sequences featuring incredibly over-the-top levels of gore. Like, the chief among them was a gratuitous sex scene in which two victims are graphically mutilated by a xenomorph mid-coitus, and the exaggerated depiction of the effects of decompression in space. So, they say, but yeah, this was the one that alters the nature of the xenomorphs, including the fact that they can, you know, the xenomorph virus, assimilates any genetic material it's mixed with, leading to stuff including a xenomorph mosquito and a large creature that's seen toward the end of the story. The virus is even able to take control of inorganic matter and shuttle technology. ultimately turning the space station itself and the shuttle, the Smiths fleet on board into a gigantic xenomorph organisms at the climax of the screenplay. But they say, but for all its faults, Red's draft contains an arguably higher level of horror than the previous films and scripts, with many standard horror movie tropes and scenarios making an appearance. So, yeah, that one.
Just because it's more horrifying doesn't make it good.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's an alien farm filled with xenomorph hybrids born of chickens and cats, and a chainsaw fight between Sam's mother and attacking Star Beast. So, yeah, it would have been. That would have been like the. I'm trying to think of a similar horror movie where it went to like absolute like it was high concept and it went to like trash in one of its sequels. um, oh, Exorcist maybe. Exorcist is a classic, but Exorcist 2, The Heretic, people keep going. Nope, it ain't it, Chief.
What the fucking hell was this?
That's probably what Eric Red's Alien 3 would have been had they kept that. So, the next one is David Twohy's Alien 3, as I call it, the Proto-Riddick script, because this is the guy that ended up writing and making Pitch Black. Uh,
I
so
still need to see those.
it's a really good one. But basically, it's about this high-security prison planet that these guys got lifers on and are trying to do an escape. But at the same time, Weyland-Yutani's moved in and has somehow obtained aliens to use as experiments on these poor guys. According to this, it said that the next writer, David Twohy, whose story was The Prison Planet, featured no returning characters from the past Alien movies. In fact, the only reference would have been them looking through. This would have taken place many, many years after Aliens, and they would have been looking through some computer files about the alien and find a picture of Ellen Ripley listed as deceased. So she eventually died in that version. I guess that's a way to make sure to tell Sigourney, don't worry, we're not gonna rope you in for another one of these, because she was at that time saying, listen, I have a few conditions about coming back. It said that followed a group of prisoners planning to escape from Moloch Island, where the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is secretly using prisoners to test subjects to create xenomorphs with new abilities. This includes one that can bleed acid on another. No. Okay, this article's stupid because they can already do that. But this includes one that can bleed acid. I'm like, oops. Okay, I'm not reading. Okay, this one it's Screen Rant, so there's your problem. But there's xenomorph that can squeeze into tight space. They could already do that. Well, and I'm sure they're confused, but yeah. But it says, strangely, Twohy's Alien 3 feels more invested in the prison break aspect than Alien 1. His draft would have been made for a decent horror flick, but it wasn't special for or unique enough to become the third Alien. The main protagonist's styles does feel like a Riddick prototype, though, and some ideas from the pitch, like glowworms being used to light a dark area, made their way into Pitch Black. Twohy eventually quit the project when he learned that producers were working on a totally different Alien 3 without informing him. Like, this guy was busy writing his script, and they're telling another guy, can you write your script too in case this one doesn't work out? And he found out what they were doing. He's all, well, fuck you. But hey, it worked out. So here's the one I feel bad for. This is Rennie Harlin, the guy, like I mentioned, who directed Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which I think many people consider probably the second best sequel after Dream Warriors, if I had to guess.
Huh?
Nightmare on Elm Street 4. How is it considered amongst the Nightmare fandom?
Well, it came out like pretty much at the height of Nightmare on Elm Street's popularity. Like the third one kind of started off. The fourth one was kind of like riding really high. Like everyone's like Robert Englund's like throwing singers left and right. Like the dude literally was like doing it freestyle, and it's kind of people don't revere it, but they say, oh, it's a good time. This is basically what people think of when they think of Nightmare on Elm Street's stick and smarmy catchphrases and all that.
Yeah, so Rennie...
And also it has, and I argue it has the second best lead behind Nancy being Alice.
Is that the Patricia Arquette character?
No. That's from
Dream Warriors.
The third Dream Warriors. Now her character gets recasted and becomes the friend to Alice, which then propagates Alice's role to become the Dream Master.
Oh yeah,
to
I remember.
Freddy as being the Nightmare killer.
Alice was the brunette, right?
Yeah, but brunette, red hair, or kind of mix. The Lisa Wilcox.
Because I know that the other one was the blonde one that tried to take over for Nancy.
Yeah, Patricia Arquette then got recasted by Tuesday Night.
Mm. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh at her name, but
Night
uh,
spelled with a K, by the way.
I don't know. I'm thinking something else. Anyway, point is, he did what's considered one of the better Nightmare sequels. Actually, he's funny. He's not the only guy in the AVP franchise that has ties to Nightmare. Stephen Hawkins, who directed Predator 2, did Nightmare on Elm Street 5 not too long before he did that.
Yeah, that one's people are going like, it's got interesting ideas, but it's kind of uh, dark a little bit and gothic, and it's just weird.
Actually, as you know, that eventually some horror franchises try to go for that weird religious gothic feel, because even Alien 3 kind of suffers a bit from that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the theme of it was about like trying to live on through birth through like the child of the hero that was um, about to have.
But
But to its credit, it actually handled like the whole concept of like uh, young pregnancies and sudden like news about that, and like the young mothers wonder about like what to do next, who should actually get the baby and all that. Like they handled it like straight face. They didn't like walk around like, oh my gosh, it's a baby. Oh, what the heck? No, they dealt with it serious.
So, but that guy, Rennie Harlan, his deal was that he said this in all the documentaries. He didn't
Oh,
want.
to pretty much like summarize what Nightmare 4 Rennie's nightmare. It's basically how Robert Englund describes it. Ah, this is the MTV Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes, Rennie Harlan would go on.
Where pretty much the imagination's just skyrocketed high.
Yeah, so Rennie eventually went on to do Deep Blue Sea and other stuff. So the guy's not like a complete. People say, "Oh, Rennie who?" But yeah, but here's the thing: he had just finished Nightmare on Elm Street at 28. He's been getting calls from everybody, including Steven Spielberg, to our meetup to develop something that ultimately didn't pan out. But he was getting calls from everybody. So when he was told by Fox, "Hey, you want to do another Alien for us?" and since he's a fan of Ridley and James, it's like, well, why wouldn't I? So he said, I found an interview with him that has quotes from him. So he says that he gets really scared because he's found himself dealing with a group of people who are asking him to make a film like Aliens with the same kind of guns but on a different place. But yeah, if he made a movie that was just a copy of the previous one and just added more firepower and some things, he would be considered a laughing stock. Because I don't want to do what came before. The idea for the story is to move it somewhere different. Like Alien and Aliens are in the same through line, but it pushes it forward. I think that's what Rennie says. Rennie is kind of smart with the sequel, saying you don't just do the same one, but with different sets and different people. Because, I mean, we love our repeatable films. Like, I mean, speaking of slashers, Friday the 13th. It's not a stretch to say if you've seen one, you've seen them all. But there's some that are better versions of the concept, and some that just drop the ball on the concept of Takes Manhattan. But yeah, the thing is, yeah, there's formulaic filmmaking where you try to follow what worked before and just kind of either repackage it or try to put a different spin on it, or then you try to do something completely radical and different and try to like put it on another level. But sometimes you run the risk of alienating your fans if they weren't ready for that kind of thing. I mean, we saw something as drastic as this as 7 years ago with a certain movie of a certain big franchise that after 2017, it just felt like the world split in two about what camp you were on for that movie. Oh, man.
But that's like the other thing we do.
Yes.
But we're still on Alien.
But he said, we can't just, yeah, Rennie says, we can't just have another movie where you have more machine guns and more flamethrowers, and again, the aliens are just attacking a place. So, William Gibson was a cyberpunk writer, and he wrote a script that they didn't like, but they weren't ready to give up on since they suggested that Gibson do a rewrite with Harlan. But Gibson declined, citing other commitments. So they wanted him to say, hey, we like your Hicks and lead virus thing and everything, but we're going to let you work with this guy. Well, I'd love to, but my schedule's a little bit, full. So he was out. So Rennie wanted to do a movie about finding out where the aliens actually came from. Go to their source, because we all know that space jockey ship originated from somewhere, and he wanted to show that. He wanted to actually, as he said this, he thought that perhaps these creatures may not be born to be bad at all, because he said he would have taken Ripley with a team of scientists and soldiers and find out what they really are. His approach would have been to go to where the aliens came from. There would be a place on a planet where they really originate from and explain what they are. And he said maybe they're not born bad at all. They're ants, and somewhere there's an anthill, and now they're going to travel to the anthill to find out what they're really all about. So what really are they? Why did nature make them the way that they did? Are they really bad? Do we just view them as something bad because of the environment that we've experienced them in? Are they really evil, horrible killing machines who are taking over the world? And who knows? Maybe they might be evil to begin with, but just demonstrating a survival mechanism. That's how he wanted to do it. He wanted to do, let's find out more about these things. But
So he basically wanted to do a hodgepodge of Prometheus and Covenant, essentially.
before it came out, yeah. Actually, as David Goller put it, he put it Planet of the Aliens. That's what Rennie wanted to do, Planet of the Aliens. And he said we would have seen the alien supermarket, the alien everything, basically how does their society work versus ours. And he said, but we said we would have loved to have done Planet of the Aliens, but at that time it would have been horrendously expensive to come up with all that. And he said, I think now you can do Planet of the Aliens. I'm pretty sure Ridley can do it. That's what he said in 2003 when they made the quadrilogy set, and he interviewed. They asked him about that version that never got made, and he says, "I'm pretty sure you could do a Planet of the Aliens now," which I wouldn't be surprised if Romulus and the other ones are gearing toward that kind of thing. Wouldn't it be one hell of a comeback redemption if they actually get Rennie to rewrite a draft for some up and coming guy? Maybe give that to someone like, say, Nell Blomkamp or Gareth Edwards.
Well, who knows? We're not.
We're not there yet.
We're not writers or
Producers and such.
producers to suggest these things.
So he would be an action-packed thriller. They're really interested have been for him to go to do origins and make an alien origin story, but the studios say, well, people wouldn't want to see that. And he doesn't know why they didn't buy it.
Yeah, they do. They actually do, guys.
So then he made the cornfields of Kansas plot, where he said the aliens come to Earth, and at that point, that was when they were really committed to the idea of doing the on Earth, everyone can hear you scream, because he was still attached at that point. So it was going to be the aliens come to Earth. It would be Middle America, Kansas cornfield, with aliens going through the cornfield towards the farmhouse. Then you realize the aliens have come to Earth. He says, just show that poster to the audience. It'll be the biggest movie ever. Like, imagine if you see like a farmer on a cornfield and you just see these lines in the corn coming toward him, kind of like the raptor scene from The Lost World.
That would actually be terrifying.
Yeah. So he said, but the studio's response was, you're gonna face palm at this, buddy. No, people wouldn't like it. It's a science fiction movie. It has to take place in outer space. People won't buy it if it comes to Earth.
So, when was this when they said this? What year?
1991, 92, if I had to guess.
And 2 years later, boom goes the White House.
Yeah.
I guess they weren't really sticking with their guns on that one, were they?
Well, yeah, different rotations, but that particular group was like, well, it's sci-fi, right? It's a space movie set in space. You're like, I know, you're probably just quoting Bardock punching the ground.
Oh, that's stupid! Ass-numbing, shark-jumping bullshit!
So Rennie was more depressed because they didn't like that idea. So then that's when they did the Eric Red version, where Red had read David and Galler's original story and Gibson's script as a foundation. He felt that he had been tossed into a creative drink without a life preserver. So they didn't know what they wanted. They didn't know Sigourney was back, and they had to go through a whole new series of characters. He turned out a complete draft with new subplot, theme, and characters. Two, which were considered a piece of junk and was a product of a few weeks of intense hysterical story conferences, turning it in on February 7th of 89. Okay, so 89 was when that was drafted. But yeah, point is, they changed their minds later. So they didn't like that. He understood the film needed a new alien and suggested doing genetic experiments on one of them. As far as he would see, Hill and Geiler had no treatment with no such plan. They were unhappy with the result because they felt they had strayed too far from the original story, and Rennie Harlan was also found his story uninspiring himself. So they come in and discussion with Harlan for a month before Harlan quit, but did not write anything for him. So that was John Frasno, who wrote 48 Hours. And then they are on the prison ship story. They want to tell a story with a big prison ship where the aliens come. They say it's contained and that's how it should be. But Rennie said he liked it and said, "I don't get it." Who? Now, you're probably gonna agree with Rennie. In fact, I think you're gonna say he was the smart one. Rennie said this. I don't get it. Who cares about a prison ship? The audience isn't going to relate to a bunch of prisoners. They're prisoners. They're all bad guys, and no matter what you do, they're just going to be this dark story. And what's so great about the previous ones is that the first one was basically a bunch of blue collar guys and women who could be truck drivers, and the second one was about these soldiers with Ripley going into battles as these aliens. There's this little girl who represents humanity there. It's a mission movie, so again, it's very relatable. But if you do aliens in prison, it's just like, who cares about the prisoners? Let them die.
I mean, to be fair, not all crime are equal. Let's not forget we had that doctor fella in the final cut.
True.
That he did do something bad. It wasn't really his fault entirely. It was like, outside environment and all that. So you could have worked it, but the way Remy described the other ones, like, yeah, this fucking dude knew his aliens better than the studio did.
So he said this. He was afraid there would be no way around the fact that if they do go with that script, it would just be similar kind of environment before. More corridors, more bulkheads, doorways, things we've seen before. So they continued to go back and forth. He just friendly said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this." He spent a year working on with this, and he wanted to work with a huge studio, which is his dream. And he said to them, I honestly can't make a good movie with because they were already approaching a release date, and Rennie was like, "Blah."
Fuck that.
So he told Walter Hill words to the extent of, "Walter, I'm really sorry. I think I've been working on this for a year, and we've done illustrations, we've worked out all these storylines, but I really feel like somehow we keep circling to the same premise, and for me, it's not different enough from what the audiences have seen before. I just can't get excited about the idea of just having more guns and more aliens." So he just had no idea what to do, if it was going to affect his future or not. So he just had to trust his gut instinct. But thankfully, Fox offered him another movie called Ford Fairline, a rock and roll detective story that seemed like heaven after the dark and creepy world of Alien 3 had turned on life for him. And they liked his work on Ford Fairline that he got to work on Die Hard 2 after making it. So it wasn't all bad for Rennie, but it must have been gut wrenching to be this close to making an Aliens movie because you love the other two, and getting all these notes of, well, shouldn't it be this or shouldn't it be that, and he's a fan, so being a fan, he would know naturally you'd want to go to where they come from, and they're either thinking that's not budget effective or no, I don't know who this no one is they're talking about, but don't forget at that time and still to this day a lot of this stuff is focus group press. I'm pretty sure they asked a bunch of regular know-nothings. Do you guys think they will work this way? Don't forget, that's the same type of thing that got the Thing prequel redigitized because someone commented it looks a little too much like an 80s movie when that was the point. But, I don't know. Focus groups can sometimes lead to a bunch of, hiccups and heartbreak. So, that's the end of Poor Rennie Harlan. And now we got the version that I am the most sad about and liked, and it is the one that almost got made. That is Vincent Ward's Vision of a Wooden Planet. The idea, there's a whole section in the documentary all about it that does more justice than I can. But basically, the gist of it is, you got these monks who live on a space station that is sheathed entirely in wood. It has a life support system and gravity, but basically, it's this big old wooden orb that has this much atmosphere sticking out between it and out. And these guys have shunned technology for whatever reason, so they're living in the dark ages, middle ages type look, even though they're on a space station with this piece of technology, and they make glass works to make these mirrors and stuff. So one of the guys pokes his head over the clouds, literally pokes his head out of the clouds to see space, and he can see a shooting star coming down, and that star brings down the crashed EEV. And in that one, Ripley's the sole survivor. Newt is nowhere to be found. I don't know, he doesn't even mention Hicks in his draft, but I'm sure he bought it somehow too. And the monks, kind of look at her with suspicion because, you got this woman from the stars. And then the alien starts showing up and killing people. And the way they see it, this thing is a literal demon from hell. This thing is, coming to punish the sinners and stuff. And they even think that Ripley, in some sort of religious sense, is the cause for this. So what if they sacrifice her to the beast type feeling? She does have one monk on her side. His name is John, I think. And he basically fills the same role as Dr. Clemens did, as being the one guy who believes her story with the alien. What's funny is she sees the alien as an actual creature, as a, this bug thing, whereas for the people, it's this, judgment day come to them. In fact, the alien was been like 15 feet tall had the draft gone through. On top of that, Ripley is also experiencing these weird visions, like sheep with human faces, and these deformed xenofetuses, and she realizes she's experiencing morning sickness. She had been somehow impregnated by the alien, and it starts meshing into where reality and her visions start like just blending together. So she's not quite sure what to make of it because of the hallucinations being brought on by the alien. So, uh, the there's a great scene he said he loved where there's this part where all these monks sit in like this communal bathroom that's like this. There's stalls, but it's like all goes over like a artificial lake or whatever, and you can see the alien swimming underneath the lake, and you see these guys just sitting on their john, like from the front view, and they start going frunk, getting sucked into the toilet by the alien, dragging them down into the water. She said it would have been a darkly comical yet horrifying scene, but I just thought, just imagine these guys sitting on the shitter, and then they just get like just brought down by the alien. So on one hand, yeah, that's scary, but on the other hand, you can't help but say the alien is pulling guys down through the crapper, like, like what do you
What the hell are we doing?
yeah. So it does lead to a part where they try to fight the alien with fire. They only have like pitchforks and scythes, and they're trying to lure it somewhere. While the like I says, the alien's in a cornfield, and there's a scene where he says, "I want this scene overhead where the camera sees the cornfield, and you can see the alien coming at them like a shark, and they don't know where it's coming from in the cornfield." So again, there's that image that I said is that would be cool to see one day with xenomorphs. So they eventually end the alien by pushing it into the lead works where they make the glass. It comes out covered in molten glass, and they throw water at it, and the thing from thermal shock just explodes. Now this is how the movie was going to end, and that Ripley, now that she knows she has a thing inside her and everything like that, she decides to think she's had enough. She just smiles and just walks straight into the flaming cornfield toward the fire, and then that's where the movie would have ended. And Sigourney was in love with that idea of like, yeah, it's very poetic that she thinks of all she's ever known, and this they say she kind of becomes sort of like not affectionate, but she does gain some sort of affiliation with the alien because it's the only thing that's been a constant in her life. She doesn't remember anything else. Everyone she knows has been killed horribly, but or something. So in a way, she's thinking like, well, I guess this ends with me. So she walks into the cornfield on fire, and they all like that bit. The producers came to me and said, well, we like that part where the alien, you're gonna scare the bejesus out of people with the alien, and we like that there's one inside Sigourney, but could you do a version where she doesn't walk into the fire? And he goes, well, I don't know, man. So he came up with the idea that they do like a sort of exorcism/abortion type procedure that makes the alien embryo come out of Ripley, but then it crawls into the nearest warmest host, which is the monk, and he gets it, and he walks into the fire while Ripley watches. And Sigourney was not too happy about that. She thought, no,
That's what a fucking ripoff.
I sign on to be, I sign on to be killed in this one. That's the idea I like. You bring that version back. So
This dude's like, no, you gotta make more. You gotta make more.
And Vincent said that. Well, he said this. The questions started to come in, and the guys are all like, "Okay, we like that bit, but why does it have to be made out of wood? Why is it wood?" Which was for the metaphorical architecture, for the metaphor and everything. Like, can it be like a prison planet instead? Like instead of monks, can't they all be like convicts? Cause I'm guessing this at the same time that David Tui's script was coming. I remember a lot of guys simultaneously were working on this at the same time. So he made the changes, and it was just, it got away from him in the end. There's a part where they tell him, listen, you either go ahead and do these changes or you'll be fired. I think I said at the time, I think I'd rather be fired. So he went on to do great things afterwards, but he looks back and other people who made it, who were on Alien 3's production, read that script. They signed on for that. So imagine they're surprised when they say we're not doing that version no more. Like there's a guy who literally built all this cathedral stuff, getting ready to make like the religious architecture and drafts, and they tell them it's a prison planet now. They go, "Oh, I signed on for the wooden planet one. Yeah, well, you're doing this one now." Like the poor set designers are like, "Ooh, oh man." So David Fincher was brought on eventually, but all those are what could have been with the Alien movies of Alien 3, and I know Derek's just thinking, "Oh, you stupid, stupid maniacs." Hell, with some of them, you're probably quoting Krennic. "We are on the verge of greatness. It is close." Although, of those versions, if I had to guess, you either would have really opted hard for Rennie Harlin's alien origin idea, or William Gibson's, Hicks-led idea, if I had to guess.
Those ones sound a whole lot more interesting than this slogfest that we got.
On top of that, me, of course, being the transformation enthusiast that I am, would have loved to have seen them find a way to do like canon xenomorph transformation. They actually made it into a comic book, and like I said, it looks bad. They mutate horribly, like the Thing, like everything's bubbling. They kind of like rip off their own skin and bone, and you can see the exoskeleton and everything. It would have been nuts. I'm sure the effects guys were probably thinking, "Oh, that would have been cool to do." Shit. So Fincher was brought on, but here's the sad thing: Fincher was brought in with no working script. He had drafts, but nothing for him to actually follow. On top of that, they even froze production for a while because there was an argument on set, and I think things were put on hold. And hell, the effects guys ended up just making touch-ups on the dead bodies more than the actual alien because there was talks to bring Giger back on board. Fincher was excited to have Giger back on board, but it was all done through fax because remember, Giger doesn't like flying. So he was going to make a whole brand new alien. They wanted to make a much more refined version of the alien. It would have been on four legs. He's to quote Giger, it would have been built like a puma or a panther, like that kind of sleekness of it. No tubes on the back. It would.
What the hell is a puma?
It's a mountain lion. I know. But okay, I know there was a joke there.
You're making that up.
Yeah. So it would have had the long head, but the head would have had these reeds in it, like scales that would move to catch the whistle like a flute, and it would indicate the alien's mood. It had these claws that came out from between the fingers, like that. Basically, like it would close its knuckles, and the longer claws would come out. So Wolverine.
So basically, it was going to be a Wolverine.
And
why?
And here was the thing. That was very Giger-esque. He redid the tongue and the face. So he thought the alien had too much detail in the face, so he lessened it down and gave it an actual feminine lips. According to one of the sculptors, they based the lips off of Michelle Pfeiffer's lips. And
oh, God.
And the tongue, instead of having the mouth, would have been this long little tongue that would go in for a kiss, slither down there, and then the sharp bits would come out, and everything would just be pulled out. Everything inside would be pulled out. So that was the idea.
Venom. You're literally describing a venom.
Yeah. So that's what they were going to do. And Giger had made this huge-ass sculpture of this new, refined, evolved alien. And here's the thing. The guys were so busy on production that they couldn't go and see it. The effects guys that he was working with, because he didn't work directly with them, but they sent through a message, Tom Woodruff Jr. and Alec Gillis would have loved to have been at the demonstration, but they said, we were just too busy. So maybe you could show us afterward. But at that point, Fox had kind of not given him proper money and respect. They didn't credit him for Aliens. He had to fight to get his name reinstated for Aliens. And, at this point, he kind of said he was done with Fox. He sent them a letter sealed with a black candle stamped with a pentagram about how he was pissed off with them. So he said they probably considered us part of the enemy now, which is kind of sad. I would have loved to have, They tried to bring some of his concepts into their final alien design with the no tubes on the back, the quadruped stance, and the some of the lip detail and everything. But it was different than Giger's final take, so that's another sad story there. Again, the documentary Wreckage and Rage, The Making of Alien 3 on the Anthology is the best resource to see just how a lot could have gone wrong. In fact, I almost was tempted to have Derek watch it with me, but I think we already spent too much time on this long, sad story for us to, it would have made it even sadder to talk about. So I think just hearing it from me, she's just gonna have to take my word for it.
Yeah, and I just tell you guys ahead of time, you're probably gonna be hearing more Jonesy talk about this movie than me, because frankly, I don't give a damn about this movie. This is just depressing. It's like, and I know you're all gonna say it's like, oh, it's like a horror franchise. Of course, it's gonna be depressing. It's like, it doesn't have to be a fucking like chore to sit through the damn thing.
On top of that, now he doesn't outright hate this movie. That honor belongs to AVPR, but he's more apathetic about this movie. It's like he can't be brought up to care about it. He can't care about loving it or
Nobody
hating it.
survives in this, so what's the fucking point?
Well, yeah.
Like, you might as well just roll a clip of, we hope you've enjoyed No Moral Theater, ladies and gentlemen.
How come you didn't use that last night?
Oh, I was too drained at that point. That's how drained this movie is.
He didn't even make the quips he usually makes. Like, the whole time before we saw this movie, he kept making because I asked him about the montage to end it with the famous Sigourney getting menaced by the alien close to the side, and he says it was so famous it was parodied by Robot Chicken by Alf. So when the time actually came up to quote the Alf line, he even thought, no, I don't think I will. Like, shit, man, he's really like just bummed.
Like, it's like that literally came out after killing a relatable character we followed.
Oh my god!
Like, at this point, the movie was just telling me to fuck off, and I was like, all right, well, fuck you too.
And on top of that, the points that Rennie brought up earlier, because there's a part where they're talking about how there might be a virus here, you don't want that, and the Superintendent Andrews goes on to talk about how they're all double Y chromos, all life sentences, all rapists, murderers, child molesters, all scum. They may have found religion, but they're no less dangerous than they were before. That got them their help. One of the guys that you're supposed to like, a hero, even says, "You don't want to know me, man. I'm a murderer and rapist of women." Like, he's flat out saying, "Hey, they're putting it all to bear." So you're going, and we're supposed to root for these guys? No, but they some of them do turn around, I say. But like Derek does mention, a lot of I think what David Fincher is really good at in all of his films, he has an uncompromising view, a straight, almost brutal, you morality in all of his films. I mean, you see it in movies like Seven, The Game, even The Social Network, even though that's about the founding of Facebook, comes off as a very, stark, uncompromising view of, like, this guy screwed over his friend and such and so on. Andrew Garfield's amazing in that movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch Social Network just for Andrew Garfield alone as the friend of Jesse Eisenberg, his character. David Fincher is really always known for just being very straightforward and very bold with his vision choices and all that stuff. So it was his idea. Like, hell, Sigourney said one of the things that endeared her to David was when she first met him, and she asked him, because everybody has a view of how they want to write Ripley, so he asked her, "So how do you see Ripley?" I think she meant in the metaphorical sense, like literary sense, but he thought she meant actual. Like, I don't know. He said, bald, perhaps, and that made her say, "Oh, I love this kid." So she agreed to shave her head. In fact, a lot of the convicts were nervous about shaving their heads, but when they heard that Sigourney did it, they followed suit, because Sigourney was the first in line to say, "Hey, let's do that." That is one of the most unique visions from this movie. Is if you've seen the posters, everybody knows the poster of bald Sigourney Weaver. In fact, it's so well known that Wade Wilson makes a joke about it when he sees Negasonic Warhead at the X Mansion wearing fatigues. So wait.
Still didn't make a joke about that because the movie was pissing me off.
Yeah, but I love that bit. I remember actually of all the Deadpool jokes when I first saw that movie, you probably guessed that was the one that made me laugh the hardest. Me being who I am. When you're like, "Ripley, Alien 3, she's all, fuck, you're old. And I laughed and I went, shit, I am old.
Big laugh, any real pain.
Yeah, just like it's just like every time I kind of wince inside a little bit. Like, the Empire Strikes Back one in Spider-Man Civil War, Captain America Civil War made me laugh. It was old, but I still laugh. Okay, that's funny. And then in Infinity War, they had to defeat Ebony Maw, and Parker's all like, "Okay, You
You ever
remember that?
seen a movie called Aliens?
I'm all like, and I keep telling Derek, technically Alien, which is still an old movie, was the one that innovated the sucking out into space thing more than Aliens, but okay, but Aliens is the more well,
Aliens had the queen ejected out too.
yeah. Oh, so anyway, point is though, there's a few things about David's vision that the poor guy had no to finish script. He had a line producer to help him out with things, and that was also fortune to fire. They had arguments with some of the set designers about how things should go, because remember, a lot of them signed on for the wooden planet thing. Uh, One of the guys he was looking up to as a cinematographer ends up going ill, and had to be out of production, which is a real big demoralizing thing for him because he always wanted to work with the guy, and the guy was almost like a mentor to him. And you got all these other guys who are thinking. One of the guys admitted, when I first saw him, I thought he was the production assistant's coffee boy or something because he was so young looking that he didn't realize he just passed by the director that time. So it's like he had to deal with the age thing. He had to deal with the system, the higher ups not really having any faith in, you're taking a long time. You're spending all this money. We got a date to meet. Hell, John Landau, who would eventually work with James Cameron on all the Avatar films, said, "I think we were setting out to make a date to actually make a finished movie, and that was the big problem for David." He said David had he been given a delay time, had he been able to write it from scratch and work everything out, it might have worked out differently for him. But the fact that it was, you got to hit that date, and he having that on his back, like there's a sad moment in the documentary where they talk about an end of shooting day, and you got David on top in the background saying, "I really hope we get somebody to see this movie." And Paul McGann, lovely Paul McGann, said how when he first met him, he had this great big smile, youthful energy, great big smile on his face. He was really fun to be around. But as production went on, that smile just eventually wilted away. And Paul McGann to this day thinks they were unjustly unfair, and he could already back then see the genius of Fincher and some of his setups and stuff. And most people will be watching the movie and say, "What the hell did he see in it?" Well, that all depends on the version you see, because there are two versions of this movie. The other one is called an assembly cut. It is not a director's cut because David Fincher, after finishing this movie, washed his hands of it and never wanted to go back, not even to remaster or reappraise the thing. So, but it is made from an early draft he turned in the Fox. Because this was 2 hours and 20 minutes, and remember, this was at a time where you had to shave the movie to 20 minutes. That's what happened to Cameron's movie. That's what happened to this movie. And I'm pretty sure
That's what happened to Zack Snyder's movies too.
So point is, because he wanted to fit in more screenings. So this longer version exists before it was trimmed down to what we eventually got, but it shows a little more of the motivations of the religious characters. It shows more of the it had a different origin for the alien. Instead of coming out of a dog like it does in the finished script, it was coming out of a dead ox. And the idea would have been fun because you had like this benevolent ox creature, and its offspring is far removed and far different. But I think they figured it wasn't predatory enough, so they went with the dog. Plus, it's more easier to feel sad for the poor puppy when you see the damn facehugger marks on its face. Hell,
No, an ox has a little bit more of a biblical tone to it.
yes, exactly. I think that goes well in line with the Bible tone. Sacrificial ox.
You can tell which cut I slightly prefer a little bit more. Stomach a little bit better. That's my wording.
Yeah, and the thing is, we could have watched Alien, the assembly cut, but I'm pretty sure a majority of people growing up only ever knew the theatrical cut, and I mean, when you
also Jonesy wanted to see his little queen.
Yes, okay, so like I said though, basically the basic storyline is that Ripley crash lands on a prison planet, and her colleagues have all been killed by the crash, unceremoniously, I might add, and that's usually a point of contention with fans. But I thought of a way where you could have still had her crash land alone. You could have had it that Burke went ahead and savaged the pods and sabotaged the pods, and during the evacuation thing, Ripley's pod was put in a separate thing that was meant to probably hose the alien or whatever. So that ends up getting launched while the Sulaco still flies on home. So you could have still had it happen without having to kill off the others. But David really wanted to set up a "we're fucked" tone from the beginning. That was his intention. Hell, the music alone, hell, people joke that the Fox fanfare for this movie starts, but it ends up stalling halfway through the song before it gets to the finishing note and turns into a horror score, and everyone goes into the "oh shit, we're screwed." As Derek was saying, this movie keeps reinforcing the abandon all hope from the get go. Like when you hear that,
Yeah.
like when you hear that da 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 da, you go, "oh, here we go, ba da ba bum." Here comes the ba 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 bum, and then it just freezes, and you go, "Uh, your Fox EXE has stopped working." Although I do contend that I agree with some fans who hear it say it's genius to unsettle people with that and say, imagine if every Alien sequel since then uh, started with that to let you know you're watching an Alien film. You know I would be all for that. Hell, Aliens versus Predator, the PC game, does that. It opens up with that ba da 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 do 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 do, but then it goes into that little stuttering, and it turns into a drone, and you go, and then it starts the Alien versus Predator game, which one of my favorite things. So she crashes on this planet. They're dead, and she starts seeing signs that an alien may have been on board. So, but for reasons only known to her, she is keeping this from most people. When they ask her, "You seem very curious about something. What are you looking for?" Like when she asked him to do an autopsy of Newt's body, she wants to make sure there's no chest burster in her. So she's telling the doctor, "Look for some disease in there," and he's all like, well, tell me what you're looking for." Well, she says an old disease that hasn't been seen for 200 years, but he still does it for her anyway because she's really pleading. Even though he even says, "Now that I'm not a complete idiot, can you tell me what you're really looking for?" Like, for some reason, I think she says, if I do tell anybody about it, they're just going to think I'm crazy. Because look what happened to her when she talked about the alien at the tribunal in Aliens. They kept saying, "You found something that has never been seen anywhere else. It sounds ridiculous. You have this creature that can bleed acid for blood and stuff." And they're saying, like, listen, you're nuts. Psyche valves and all that stuff. So she's probably thinking, well, she's on a planet full of ex-cons, 25 people as a custodial staff, and she's got there's a great bit where she comes out from naked from the hospital, and she even asked the doctor, "Should you gonna give me some clothes, or should I just go out like this?" He's like, "Well, given the nature of our indigenous population, I suggest clothes." And by the way, this is Dr. Clemens, played by the great Charles Dance, who I would love forever as Tywin Lannister in the Game of Thrones series, and even makes a small appearance in the MonsterVerse as Jonah Allen, the eco-terrorist who tried to, unleash Ghidorah. We've opened up
Well, the game.
Yeah, we've opened up Pandora's box, and there's no shutting it now. Like, that guy has a presence. And funny enough, he wasn't the first choice for Clemens. In fact, Fincher was pushing hard for a young up-and-coming actor at the time named Richard E. Grant, who the producers and studios felt was too young for the role to, like, really so convinced that this doctor with the sword passed. Grant would eventually go on to play Admiral Pride in The Rise of Skywalker. And I love that bastard for whatever reason, even though he technically steals General Hux's position. I still feel like that epic shot of him being blown out the window is cool, but it would have had more punch if you gave it to that Weasley Weasel in the end, rather than just found our spy. Boop. Hux was ejected. So anyway, Ripley is asked them to cremate the bodies, because. By the way, to get over the whole Hicks thing, Michael Bean heard from someone that they looked like they were trying to make a chest burster out of his character, so he got pissed off and told them they can't use his likeness for that. There's no way. They were offering me all kinds of money, and he said this: "I don't care how much money you offer," and he says, "I was young and stupid back then." But there's no way that thing's coming out of my chest. So they compromised and asked for a photo for the use for the KIA picture. And he says, "I probably got paid for that picture about the same amount I got paid for on my first ever film, so it worked out." But yeah, like it says, they smashed his face beyond repair. Like, there's a maquette. I don't have a picture to show Derek, but you see up from the neck, it's just like a big chewed up bubble gum with pieces of jawbone sticking out, and maybe some brain in the lower corner. But point is, he got like completely flattened by the support shaft. And if you play that weird fan fiction canon known as the Colonial Marines DLC, you find out that that guy wasn't Hicks, because as you know, miraculously somehow Hicks is alive and well in that game. Spoilers for a game everybody's still mad at, but uh, yeah, they explained it that the company ended up hooking the Sulaco to a passing by passenger ship with with colonists inside it, and we're using them to experiment on the alien. But the aliens got loose, and some surviving colonists from that thing tried to go into the Sulaco to get some help, get some backup firepower. So they wake up Hicks first. There's already a facehugger on Ripley at this point, and during the fight with some Weyland-Yutani private hired mercs, this poor guy named Turk, who's wearing the shorts and the bandage around his stomach, ends up getting stuck in the tube because the guy fights him. He puts him there to like subdue him to say, "You stay in there before I get back to you, closer to the tube." And then that means he's stuck in the cryo tube when it gets ejected, and the support shaft falls on his face. So that's how Hicks miraculously survives in that version of events. He
And what
does.
this? And what was the point of that, though?
Well, the idea was I don't know. So the idea was to go back to Zeno Prime at the end, because at the end of Aliens Colonial Marines, it hints that they found the coordinates to the alien homeworld, and then Hicks does go back to. He finds a way off the ship and takes the shuttle to where Ripley landed. He happens to walk in just in time to see her jump off the leadworks, so he felt defeated. So they end up going back to LV-426 to where the space jockey ship is. They end up nuking that, and they hope that they sent the coordinates to where to find the Zeno Prime so that they can take people out there to take it out or whatever. So that was the idea before all that got scrapped because Colonial Marines' mismanagement pissed off everybody. But anyway, so the bodies are burned, but we got this great moment where Charles Dutton's Dylan gives off a speech, because Andrews reads the cold impassioned ashes to ashes, dust to dust speech about how they're no longer in pain and anything, but you don't really you feel like it's more procedure for him than anything heartfelt. So when you got Dylan coming in asking why are the innocent punished, why do we suffer, and Derek's all, I'm sitting here wondering the damn same thing. He actually commented that when he said that, like, why are the innocent punished? He's all, yeah. So I gotta say I do. In fact, when I started pointing out crew members and everything, Derek told me, I have a feeling you're gonna get a lot more enjoyment out of this than me. I'm like, I actually apologize for that. I'm like, hey, look, there's famous actor Pete Postlewaite as Brother David. He was Roland Tembo in The Lost World, and I was at that minute. Derek said, I have a feeling you're gonna enjoy this more than I am. And I'm like, so we meet. Ripley has to shave her head for narrative reasons because while they're doing the funeral speech, the chest burster comes out of the dog. In fact, one of the Tom said he was kind of sad when he heard that they had to redo the effect because they worked so hard to make the ox come out with actual blood guts and everything. So he said it just stunk to get it perfectly out. And they told him, "Oh, we're not doing that anymore. We're doing a dog." And he thought it was easy to feel sorry for the dog because people like dogs, so to see one suffer, you go, oh. She said, I kind of felt sad.
That's a cheat, and you know it.
Yeah, he said, I kind of felt sad. He says, because that had already been done in the thing. He said, that had been done in the thing. So he said he was very like that. It kind of disheartened him and plus he was behind the actual ox itself, the body of the ox, ramming that chest burster to make sure it went through at the right angle, and they would always misfire. So all that hard work of trying to get the perfect angle for the chest bursting for the ox, and they tell him, we're doing another version. So they're like, oh. So there's a lot of heartbreak on this movie for a lot of guys involved in all levels. So the alien eventually does what aliens do. It starts killing, and this alien, which fans have dubbed the dragon, thanks to the ravings of the mad prisoner Golic, has the highest kill count of any lone xenomorph in the main movies. Because he's a soul alien, like, we have the big chap. He's probably killed like 5 of the Nostromo members, 4, depending on the counts. But and you got the aliens at Acheron, but they're all different aliens, so you can't really say one of them had obtained the kill count on the Marines. But the dragon wastes a lot of prisoners on screen. Very violent too. Like, I thought, like, damn, there's a lot of blood when I was cutting together the montage for this thing. I'm like, I hope that doesn't get us looking a little sideways from some people, but who's gonna care? So the the big thing too is that they once the alien shows up. The alien kills the first guy by spitting acid in his face, and he falls into a fan. It's a very violent kill, I might add. But it does lead to one of my most favorite punchlines where the doctor is looking around because they told him, come to the vent and assess the situation. And he says, well, there's not much to say, is there? Death was instantaneous. To which 85 responds, no shit. Just that always got a giggle out of me for some reason. So, Ripley is sent on a mission to find out what happened with the ship exactly. So she has a flight recorder, but nothing, no computer to hook it up to. Because as we find out with this low facility space station, prison planet, there's nothing works. No cameras work. Everything's barely running on low power. No light bulbs. No flashes. They got nothing going on that would make it a modern planet. So I guess that's why they keep it a prison planet, because most people go crazy from just how low tech it is. But so Bishop would have been the best way to like get it. Even though I said the droid was smashed to pieces and thrown into the rubbish bin, she had to go and find him. Even though he's been warned, don't let her go alone, because these guys are all ex-cons with a very high violent record of being murderers, rapists, and all the like, which we get to see proven when she does try to take Bishop and it runs into a group of guys who attempt to gang rape her. And what's fun? This is what's funny to me about it. The song that plays for this is done by Elliot Goldenthal, who would go on to do Batman and Forever and Batman and Robin, and he used the exact same riff and beat in the scene where Robin steals the Batmobile and runs into some painted punks trying to have their way with a blondie. And that's the one where they go like, "You're not Batman," and he goes like, "Hey, I left my suit in the cleaners, okay?" Basically. So that whole deal, yeah, that makes me laugh. But there's a part that always stuck with me for years. I don't know why. It's the bit where, as they're trying to like string her up, this one guy, Junior, with a teardrop tattoo, tries to put on his goggles. I can't help but think of the later scene. This is way, way later, so now I think of it. But I can't help but think of "I'll Be Home in Time for Christmas" when Robotnik puts on his goggles at the end of Sonic 1. So the guy doing that kind of looks like that. And he, for some reason, just does this big primal yell, which I always remembered as a 360 rotation shot, 180 rotation shot, but it's actually just Dylan coming from behind to like beat the shit out of him for attempting this. But there was a commentary channel, and they admitted they couldn't help but laugh. It's like, I'm not supposed to laugh at this scene, but it's a scene where this guy like is like psyching himself. He's going Super Saiyan, getting ready to like run the train or whatever. And it's like this power up witness me moment, and a lot of people seem to find that humorous. I always found it rather more primal than anything, but to show you that these guys are, just like the warden said, they're all a bunch of crazy, scumbags, which leads back to Rennie's point. If you show these guys to be like this, this trigger happy, why are we gonna care when the alien starts like? I saw a comment very much say that, a comment on a YouTube channel saying, when they found out that all the guys were a bunch of criminals, and after that scene with Ripley, you were rooting for the alien to go and rip everyone apart except for Sigourney. But it does lead to a great moment where Ripley just decks a guy super hard for even attempting that shit with her, and it's been used in all the promos, so I really love seeing that bit where she just rolls back for a punch and just knocks his ass out at the climax of the song. So we get to Candles in the Wind with Boggs and Rains, and we got Gallic, played by Paul McGann, the doctor, shown to be a little bit crazy, and he's always eating cereal. In fact, that's what they keep telling him not to chew. So he ends up running afoul of the alien by watching it kill two of his friends right in front of him. But it does lead to an epic moment where he gets blood splattered all over his face, and he looks up in awe at this rather mythical-looking creature just, covered in blood and looking like Judgment Day itself to him. As he describes it later, when they catch him, they caught him with blood on his face and think he went and did it. He says it was a dragon that feeds on minds, which is a good way to interpret the xenomorph's tongue bite. And that goes back to Vincent Ward's script of these monks seeing the creature as a sort of religious sense rather than a scientific sense. We see it as a bug, as an alien, as a creature, but they see it as, like it says, wrath itself come down to judge all the sinners. And since they're a bunch of prisoners, no doubt they are. In fact, all the extended cuts has prayers where Dylan opens up with, say, "Let us remember that we are all sinners in the hands of an angry God." That's like their prayers open up with that. So I guess it would make sense for them why they would see the alien as a sort of, punishment, divine punishment sent on them. So we also get this heartbreaking scene with Bishop talking about to Ripley, confirming that the alien was on board the whole time, and it's not that's not just Lance in makeup sitting on a bed pretending to be a broken droid. They actually built this articulated Bishop puppet with lip syncing capabilities and everything, and they're very proud of that moment. In fact, they referred a lot of things to it, including stuff like the Kennedy assassination for how Bishop's caved-in skull should look. And you kind of feel bad because Bishop is a character you really like in in the second Alien movie. You get to trust him, so when you see him go from this handy droid guy to like a piece of chewed up gum, barely able to talk to you, you can't help but feel sad at that. And he even tells Ripley, "I could be real work, but I'll never be top of the line. So just I'd rather be nothing. Like just disconnect me." He still tries to find a way to be funny, like when he looks at Ripley and says, "I like your new haircut," but she has to let him go. And at that point, Gallick's brought in talking about this raving mad dragon that killed his mates. And she finally tells the head staff, yes, we're dealing with an alien creature that has acid for blood, it kills on sight, all this stuff. And so they still say, yeah, we got word from the company that they'll be here in a matter of days rather than the usual supply run, and you're going to be quarantined for the entire time. And she even asked him, well, we got to find a way to fight this thing, any weapons on board? And even Derek's pointing out, Ripley, this is a prison. Why would they have any access to guns?
Yeah, if a lot of people aren't in the know, prisons typically don't actually have weapons on their premises. Mainly because if something like a breakout ever happened, they would be the first thing that prisoners would get their hands on.
Mm-hmm.
Or if like a guard wasn't aware of anything, a prisoner could actually slip one of the weapons off and hold anyone that comes near their cells at gunpoint. So, yeah, that's why you see a lot of batons always. Like this was even something Lee Cara had to be corrected on when he made a comment on how like what's with all these guards not having like actual weapons to be armed with. In the comments section, totally. Well, that's because it's by protocol they really can't. This is not a military installation. This is a prison.
Yeah. So she does say that they have no ways to go after them. And I said, we're fucked. So, no, you're fucked. Yeah. You're going to be here till they pick you up. And that's when we get that lovely scene with Ripley and Dr. Clemens, where because when she slept with him, because it's funny, they kind of play this game of deflecting. She'll ask something very personal about him, so he'll deflect with something about the planet. He'll ask what the heck is she looking for. She'll deflect by saying how much she likes him or whatever. She sees a barcode on his head and says, I kind of screwed up. I messed with a prisoner. No, I'm not a prisoner. Well, then what's with the barcode on your head? He's like, well, that deserves an explanation. So he finally decides to level with her and break down that, yes, he used to be a promising med student on the height of his career, but he got addicted to drugs and morphine. And they had a big blast happen, and he partied out earlier and got a little drunk. So when he showed up to work on that double shift, he ended up, prescribing the wrong dosage of painkiller and killed 11 people in a 30 casualty event. And then he does jokingly he got a 7-year sentence and his class reduced, and he said, well, at least I got off the morphine. But he knew that no one would ever be able to hire him again, so he figured he'd stay with the prisoners. He got to know them pretty well. But the way the music plays for this, the way Charles Dance delivers it, you are like, I really like this guy. So of course that's when the movie decides to say fuck you and kill him like seconds after that. Because even people looking back say, we probably killed the Doctor too early in the movie. And you could argue he was probably one of the few decent human beings on there. And then, because the superintendent's an upright prick, his number 2 is a yes man, a brown noser. Everyone else is a crazy convict. And even the most likable, approachable guy of them is, pretty, he even says, don't get to know me, man. I'm pretty rough. So it's like, who does Ripley have as an ally? Bishop's dead. Everyone's gone. She just opened up to Clemens, and now he's gotten, like, his head all over the place. And this is where we get that iconic scene of Ripley, cornered against the wall. The alien's right up to her, but for some reason, it relents. It doesn't go after her. It just takes its kill. And that's when the first hints of that she's been impregnated come out. and they kill the superintendent right in front of everybody. And this is when they have to say we have no leadership. The number two guy, like they admit, is not no one anyone has any confidence in because they all call him 85 because the guy has an 85 IQ, which well you can kind of see it in how he acts throughout the movie. You're like, yeah, he kind of earned that nickname. Funny enough, I had to point out to Derek that 85 was played by Mr. Andrews. Aaron was played by Ralph Brown, the guy who went on to play Rick O'Lee, the head of the Naboo Starfighter Force in Episode 1. He's basically the driver of the ship, of the Naboo ship when they leave Naboo, and then he's the one leading the flight against the Federation ship, saying we didn't hit it. So that's the same guy who played 85. But yeah, they look to Ripley, and Ripley decides to say, "Well, we got to find a way to trap it," because they point out that they have a big old weapons storage dump that was never used. They say we could probably trap the alien in there, and they try to use fire to go ahead and get the thing out. Of course, this goes foobar. And here's another aspect of the production that was sad. That I always remember reading for years that Alien 3 got in the Guinness World Book of Records for having a stuntman on fire on screen for the longest time. Like more than a minute or so. And there's these great shots of the alien surrounded in hellfire and everything like that. That would have been amazing to see in the final film. None of it made it in either cut, sadly. So imagine being that guy who endured the fires and thankfully didn't get hurt, thankfully. But you're like, oh, my work didn't make it in there. Shoot. Yeah, it sucks to be that guy. But it's such a cool image to see the alien in the fires like the way it is. I've sent Derek a few of those images. So, uh, the plan goes foobar. Now, here's where the cuts differ. If you watch the assembly cut, no, the theatrical cut, the plan goes foobar completely and the alien's still on the loose. But if you watch the assembly cut, one of the prisoners manages to lure it into the warhead shaft. And the thing is, this was this very same guy who tried to rape Ripley. So he gives her a look before he decides to run into it. Because there's a part where she's trying to distract the alien with a flare so that way he can get clear of the zone. But instead of running for safety, he ends up running towards the trap, insisting for the alien to get him. And they shut the door behind him, and yeah. And all they can hear him screaming from the other side, but they go, it was the intent to show that these guys are completely above redemption. That even though this guy tried to do something horrible to her earlier, because they recognize each other, even though they did that, he still decides to do the noble thing and sacrifice himself to, stop the alien. Which some producers felt was a bit of a. It was cool and all, but they felt it kind of demystified the creature by having it be easily trapped. So that was one thing, but that's what the books and everything went by. The alien does get captured. Now, here's where the big changes happen. So there's a whole subplot with Gallic. After the doctor was killed, he looks at the alien and goes, magnificent. He sees it as a divine being, and he thinks he could work with it because, repentance and everything like that. So after they caught the alien, he manages to convince Morse, who is one of the more complainier, chattier of the prisoners. In fact, he's the one that I could compare to the Hudson of this whole thing. And he says we got it locked down in the shaft and everything like that, ugly fucker and everything like that. So he manages to unlock Gallic, even though Gallic said, let me out. I'm not supposed to let you out, but he promised him cigarettes and stuff. So he figured, oh, what the hell, we got this thing, you're probably all right. He knocks out Morse, which everyone says is probably the dumbest decision in the whole Alien series. Someone says, yes, dumber than the captain who put his egg in the face in the Alien Covenant, dumber than this character in Alien Resurrection. No, they say the dumbest thing Morse did was let Gallic go. Gallic kills the guard that was watching the alien and ends up walking into the dark shaft and saying, okay, I've done my part. Now you gotta tell me what to do next. And the alien drops on him. That does make it into the trailers, but Paul McGann laughed because he said that people were telling me, you were kind of in the movie for a moment, then you just disappeared. So if we're going by the theatrical cut, I don't know what happened to Gallic. He just kind of stopped showing up after the doctor was killed. I think you can imply that he's probably still locked in the in the hospital area. But none of the canon references him surviving, so there's a canon to this. But yeah, So then it goes back to where the cut is. Ripley finds out she's been going through some pains and stuff, and she decides to go back to EEV and turn on the scanner, and that's when she finds out that she has one inside her, but not just any chestburster. She has a queen that once it gets out will be able to lay more eggs and cause more havoc everywhere. So she realizes that she has to die to stop this whole nightmare and everything. So she's trying to go to Dylan and other prisoners to convince him that. Now, first, she tries to go to the alien itself to get it to kill her, but it relents. So she realizes, well, shit, it won't kill me. So she tries to go to Dylan, who's even told her I'm a murderer of women. So he figures, hey, if I go back to your old habits, can you go ahead and take me out, do me a solid, because this queen is going to be a problem for everybody. She even tells Aaron to tell the rescue team, go away, we got a toxic waste dump here. Don't come back, because they can't have the alien. But, she's desperate, so she asks Dylan, go ahead and take me out. No speeches, no nothing, just do it. So he gets the axe, and it misses her and says, listen, you said it doesn't want to kill you, let's use that to our advantage, because I want to kill this thing first. Otherwise, fuck you. So the deal was, if Ripley can get the alien killed, Dylan will be able to finish it. Quick, easy, and painless, as he puts it. So that's the plan. They're gonna end up going to a great assembly hall where they're all waiting to be picked off, and Dylan goes into a great speech about how we got to go and do all this fighting ourselves. And there's a great moment where they point out, like, hey, let's just wait for the company to show up and waste this thing. But Ripley knows, listen, they want this thing for their weapons division, man. They're probably going to kill you for having seen it. Saying that they sent my crew out there. They were considered expendable. They all died. We had the Marines go with us too, and they were also dead. So you think they're going to care about some lifers who found God on the ass end of space? They don't care about any of your friends that's died. So your chance here is to just go and kill this thing now while they have a chance. And the plan is to go into the lead works, chase it into the piston, and push it into a vat of lead. End of story. That was the idea. But they need some bait. And the prisoners realize, oh shit, that's us. But Dylan's like, we're all going to die. But the question is, how are you going to check out? On your knees, begging, or on your feet? Or you're dying on your fucking knees begging. I'm not one for begging, so fuck that thing. We're going to go after it. So they figured, what the hell? I don't got... basically, to quote Rocket Raccoon, what the hell? I don't have that long of a lifespan anyway. So we get a rip. This is where the movie actually is pretty good. I mean, and you're all saying, now it gets good after we're like 140, an hour and 20 minutes in. Not a good sign, but yeah. I mean, I always was enthralled, but this is where the most memorable scene of Alien 3 happens, where they all go through the lead works being chased, and he got the Steadicam operator, did this little trick where he flipped it upside down while running, which the cinematographer setting up said he's never seen that done before. He thought it was really exciting to see that. He even asked him, could you do that again while running? Okay, so you would get this fisheye view Steadicam running through the doors in the lead, and it would give you the impression of the alien's viewpoint. In fact, this is probably the first ever movie where we've seen the alien's point of view, because that has never been established in none of the previous Alien movies, like ever. So, and in fact, I think this was the inspiration for Aliens versus Predator and how they handled the alien POV. You got the fisheye distortion, and when you run, you just zoom through all the corridors like nutso. So, especially in the PC game, man, you could get nauseous playing the Alien level too fast. In fact, if I remember, Derek, when you played the Aliens vs. Predator 2010 game, did you admit that the Alien levels were a little disorienting sometimes?
Did I say that?
Somebody I knew told me that they had a hard time playing the Alien level. They could play them, but they said they would have to like, whoa, too fast, buddy, because the alien can move at breakneck speeds in the AVP 2010 game.
I don't know. I was able to handle it fine, especially since the alien campaign doesn't last that very long.
Yeah. Now the PC Aliens version is very woo. So the prisoners do get dispatched. I mean, one moment for the life of me, can't figure out why I really like it is the piston does get started. They have to run the alien back because it's out of the target zone. And one of the guys with the hat, Jude, was very funny. He calls him like fuckface and everything, and you're like getting into him. So when you have him running helplessly saying, "Please help me, somebody," while this thing is getting closer and closer, and they're playing like the most downbeat orchestral theme you've ever heard in anything. In fact, I've used it for this very countdown. When the alien hits him, it hits him like a freight train. You see his legs kick up, and you just see this smorgasbord of blood just hitting the wall. You're like, I mean, even I'm going, well, shit. What exactly did the alien do to cause that violent of an eruption? At the same time, the company has already arrived. They got the transmission that the alien was inside her, so they actually were going to arrive in 2 hours. They said they were going to take a week, then 2 days, but now that they know there's an alien, they hauled ass to make sure they got there in the span of 2 hours. So, as this chase is going on, the company is on its way, along with this mysterious figure the camera makes sure we don't see for whatever reason. And it does culminate in Ripley cornering the alien, but it won't go into the trap. Even if she grabs it by the tail, it's like going, no, no. And once Dylan grabs Ripley and sees to threaten her, that's when the drone's all like, okay, that's it. He starts following. And while this is going on, they have these running shots of the alien that people thought was early CG. It is, in fact, a rod puppet that is composited onto the thing, but it does look janky at times. In fact, Derek kept going, why? Every time they cut to that darn rod puppet running, and it doesn't look like it's properly color corrected into the scene.
It literally sticks out like a store thumb, like every time it appears, to the point where I have to question, like, okay, this doesn't even feel like it's actually even there. Is anyone even believing that this is here?
Yeah, basically, he at this point he's Mark Hamill in that joke from Empire Strikes Back, where Vader's expressing all the future sequels and prequels, and he says, "You know what? If you're not gonna take this
If you're
shit."
not gonna take it seriously, I'm out.
Yeah, that's basically how Derek was the whole last half of the movie. So they do lure it into the pest that lead works, and Dylan ends up staying behind to keep it contained. Now that's different than his fate in the comic and in the written novel. So in the written novel, no, in the movie he fights the alien. He tells it to fuck off and starts biting him, and he's managing to fight with it with his bare hands, even though it's winning and killing him. And they drop the lead on top of the alien. Now in the book and in the comic, as I've read in the script, they dropped the lead on the alien while he and Ripley managed to crawl out. So then she tells him, "Do it. You said you gotta do it. You held up, you held up your end of the bargain. I feel it moving." And Dylan has the axe, but then he starts trembling and he says, I can't," because he's found religion and he's feeling like this is a temptation and he's just very helpless to kill her. So he turns around just in time to see the alien come out of the lead works and embrace him, and he kind of just like accepts being dragged into the boiling lead by the alien. So interesting scene, but I'm sure people probably would prefer the badass fuck you ending versus the I can't do it ending. So the alien does pop out of the lead works. And you're thinking, oh shit, well, this guy's not dying, even though he's got a nice shiny silver chrome folk, but he is super hot as hell. And earlier in the movie, they hinted by having Dylan hit the sprinklers and a super hot, heated bucket cracks. That was foreshadowing for when Morse tells Ripley to drop water on the alien because it's scalding hot. And
Explodes.
this is one of my me and my sister love the music of the fiddles that plays when the alien looks up just to get drenched, and you see the first ever use of CG in an alien movie with the shell and its head cracking, and it explodes. And what's sad about that scene to me is that there's a scene in all the trailers I wanted to see in the movies. It's not in any cuts, but before she jumps, Ripley tells the alien for the last time before she runs and douses it. But I think they cut it out because they probably felt it was a little too one-linery, but I would have just been like, oh, if they kept that line in there, because it was in all the previews. I was like looking forward to see that. It's just like when you watch Freddy vs. Jason's previews of them always putting in the place your bets moment, and they don't actually put it in the movie. Oh well. So, alien's dead. All's well and done, right? Well, no, she still has to deal with this thing inside her, and then we get the company finally catching up, including that familiar face being Bishop. Lance Henriksen playing double duty as this character credited as Bishop 2, the designer of the Bishop android, as he claims. And he keeps saying, listen, we can get you out of this, man. We have a surgery team prepped up. You know, you can still have a life. You could have children. Even Derek's going, oh no, don't push that button with Ripley. He says you'll know it's dead. But I'm going, he's probably coming on a little too strongly for Ripley to trust him. In fact, in the assembly cut, she does hesitate before closing the door. She's thinking, what if they're right? What if they do manage to destroy it? She could still finally be free of this nightmare. But at the same time, what if she's wrong? What if they do the procedure anyway and still keep it? And knowing that it's out there is just, she couldn't have that. So she makes a choice, says no, cuts off the chain link fence between them. And there's a great bit where the Wayland soldiers, for whatever reason, decide to open fire on the prisoner that's moving the piston. And Aaron had enough. 85 had enough. Because they told him that they would not kill us. But he saw one of his mates get shot. And he figures, oh, fuck you droid. And hits Bishop in the head before getting gunned down. That's when Derek's all like, again, characters you end up liking end up getting killed in this movie.
Yep.
Like, you know how I mentioned Pete Postlewaite, Roland Tembo? He gets a very unglorious death where he's hiding from the alien, but then it shows up on the other side of the glass door and literally bursts its tongue through his face through the glass window. So you're like, oof. So, like, even if you get to know someone and like them, they're, like, dead in the span of a few minutes. So when they killed Aaron, I think Derek's all like, what were they trying to prove, man? And then Bishop's still pleading with the Ripley by saying, for a guy who got hit in the head by a wrench, he's still doing pretty good. So people say, is he an android? Well, if you watch the assembly cut, he actually holds up his bleeding ear and it shows his blood to Ripley, insisting that he is not a droid. And he does plead with her, like, come on. So I think he gave away the game at that point by saying, you must let me have it. It's a magnificent specimen, so Ripley knows that, yeah, they're going to keep it. So she decides to make the one and only choice she could make. She takes a moment, has a moment to herself, holds her arms out crucifix style, and takes a swan dive toward the leadworks, all as Bishop screams in horror. Now, in the assembly cut, they wanted to show that she had a chance, that she took destiny into her own hands, and the alien didn't emerge. She goes right into the leadworks. But the effect to make it happen is horrible. I mean, I was able to forgive the rod puppet. I was able to forgive a lot of stuff, but the way it's like she stop motions into the flaming. It's not a good look. It's the one weakness of the assembly cut is that they keep that ending and they didn't even try to retouch it up. So it just that's the one part when I first saw that, and on top of that, it mangles the beautiful score that Elliot Goldenthal made for the ending, a track called Adagio. So they rescored it. So we have. What's funny is they were going to go with that ending, but then they heard that at the time they were making this, Terminator 2 also had their main hero jump into the lava. Well, this is before he was lowered, but in the original draft, he's just jumping into it. So they figured, oh shit, they have a guy jumping into lead too. So how can we make it more alien? They actually had Sigourney fly into Los Angeles. Not even a full set, because that was all shot in London. They went to Los Angeles and gave her a bald cap because her hair was already going back. She had a bald cap, and they had her do the scene with the chest burster emerging. And on one hand, you could say, well, shit, if it was that close to bursting out of her anyway, then what was the point of the surgery? But on the other hand, I could argue maybe the alien sensed the heat rising so fast, it decided at a last-ditch effort to prematurely chest burst at that minute. And in a sort of strange way, it's kind of a sweet scene. Well, not sweet. It's like she's kind of giving it an almost motherly embrace as she holds it. To make sure that the son of a bitch doesn't even leave her, fly away and leave her, to make sure it dies with her. But yeah, it's so she falls with the alien into the leatherworks. Everything's shut down, and the whole prison's gonna be sold off for scrap. And to end on a bittersweet note, they give us the same exact radio transmission being picked up on the transmission of the EEV. Because I think that is a real life phenomena where you send radio signals out and sometimes they bounce back. Like I think someone found a lost Doctor Who episode that way. But yeah, so you hear her last surviving Nostromo speech for the last time before the movie ends, and it was something. Everybody was like, down on how dismal it was, or a lot of people who were fans of Aliens were really put off by just the axing of the characters in the beginning. But over time, people have given it a reappraisal because of the assembly cut showing you what more vision it could have been. Some people appreciate the uncompromising tone that Fincher sets up. It's unique. Like, Alien 3 is not a repeat of Aliens and Alien. You can say that for sure. Hell, like I pointed out to Derek that it is one of the more cooler ways to take out an alien is by having the alien explode from thermal shock. I'm guessing the blast was enough to keep the acid from spreading far too, because that would have been bad if he blew up and acid went everywhere. But yeah. Now I know some of you guys who are bummed about Hicks and Newt, or probably know about this. I don't know, but there was a before Alien 3 was even a thing. They did make a sequel Aliens comic that was set years after Aliens, where Newt was in a mental asylum, and Hicks is a burnt out war veteran. But when they hear that the aliens are being discovered again, Hicks busts her out of the facility, and they go and fly off to with this convoy that's going to deal with the aliens. And it becomes a riveting comic that expands more on the lore by introducing concepts like the queen gestation cycle, royal jelly, an alien Earth hive being established, all that stuff. The more espionage from the Weyland-Yutani. One of the Marines that Newt falls in love with, that Malcolm ends up saving her, ends up revealed to be an android when his legs get torn off. It leads into one of my favorite Aliens comic books, Aliens Nightmare Asylum, which is done by these beautiful airbrush paintings by, I think his name is Dennis Benovova, something like that. Point is, these are some amazing illustrations, and it's a great comic told entirely in these illustrations. And you have Newt again taking center stage with Hicks being the scarred soldier there, and at the end of that run, they run into Ripley. Then Alien 3 got into production, so they're like, oh shit, how do we reconcile this whole Ripley thing? So that was in the Aliens comic Female War. So when Dark Horse had to reprint these things, they reprinted these things with changed names. Newt became Wilma or Billy, and Hicks became Booth, I think his name was. No, Wilkes and Willie. Let me pull it up because I don't want to butcher the names that bad. But point is, they had to retcon them into being separate characters, and even referred to the LV-426 thing as the Rimworld incident. But the Hicks substitute still refers to former Marines Vasquez and Hudson as former, people he flew out with. So, oops. But yeah, the Aliens comics were from Dark Horse, and they lasted for a long time, all the way up until the last decade when Marvel ended up taking over. I do believe they do have. Once the Disney company bought Fox, the Dark Horse thing wasn't renewed, but for almost 30 years straight, these guys have had comics that had influenced the lore. A lot of the games and other stuff take cues from these comics, and they be collected now in an omnibus. So if you want a alternate canon where Newt and Hicks survive, there's always that. I believe there's omnibuses that have now been released that include the original names, because, like I said, they ended up reprinting them in another omnibus with the changed names. But yeah, it said that I have it right here. Oh God, I'm sorry. I'm laughing at the fact that inside the Newt section, it refers to the fact that she almost came back in the Predator in that unused deleted scene, which I'm still going. How are they going to explain that when that happened? Yeah, so it said this. Following Aliens, the character went on to appear in the Aliens comic book from 1988 to 1990. They continued the story after the film. They traveled to the Xenomorph homeworld in order to combat infestation that's taken over Earth before teaming up with Ripley to destroy the alien. But then Alien 3 came out, in which Newt perished. So the character's name in these stories were changed to Billy. The change first appeared in the novel Aliens Earth High, an adaptation of the Aliens Outbreak comic. And Hicks became David Wilkes. and Ripley was a robot version of herself. So early subsequent reprints of these comics use these altered names, therefore keeping the story congruous with the film franchise. Despite their identities, the characters' backstories were not altered, so they're both sole surviving survivors of a marine mission that went FUBAR. So Dark Horse has reissued the original unedited versions of the early Aliens comics, thereby reinstating the character of Newt in these stories and restoring the comic series as alternative sequels to Aliens. So you got those to look forward to. I think you could find them in most bookstores, the 30th anniversary editions and such, unaltered. So yeah, Aliens 3 was a hell of a thing to get made, a hell of a thing to sit through. But it's I think people have looked back at it. Like I mentioned, Christopher Nolan points out how he felt Alien 3 was pretty underrated. He actually really quite enjoyed that film. He said that because they were asking him on an interview about because he did a teaser for Oppenheimer, and they were asking him what his favorite teaser in cinema was, and he said the original Alien teaser is considered one of the best things he ever saw. Like not just the teaser, just this TV spot of the egg. He said it was incredible, and the guy pointed out how you remember how they brought up Alien 3 that the egg was going to be on Earth. He said, oh yeah, I remember that. In fact, Alien 3, like I think he said that Fincher, the fact that he worked in the conditions he got and was still able to make a film that was for the most part a film and not just a complete mess for the most part. I think that impressed Nolan, and there is some visual style in there. So like, Nolan does actually like Alien 3, so it's good to hear that people nowadays are like finding things to like it instead of just being the relative just dunk hate on it. But I mean, we've been seeing a lot of movies get that kind of reappraisal. Like hell, G98, Godzilla 98. Everybody says how it's a good monster movie. When you look at the history of Godzilla itself, it's an outlier, but the Godzilla the series is more in line with it than the actual movie was. So I think Alien 3, people still have come to appreciate it. In fact, Chris Stuckman made a very great video about how he defended Alien 3 for a long time. And now that he went with another great Alien YouTuber and talked about how it's a big example of how too many cooks in the kitchen, studio interference can really hamstring a project and create something more tragic than anything that's outright bad. Because it's funny when you watch disaster stories like Tommy Wiseau's The Room being made, and that's made from sheer incompetence. That's another when you got a movie that it could have been good. You can see the bones, the ingredients of something actually good, worthwhile coming from it. But because of good old studio interference and a load of other things, it fell short. Maybe it flew too close to the sun.
God, I still keep seeing that tweet from the director of Chronicle stating like the Fantastic Four movie that's coming out is not the movie I would make. Let's just leave it at that.
On top of that, this is not the only time Fox really fucked with the 3 movie. Everybody remembers everybody's favorite team that's going to be making a reappearance again, the X-Men. Their third movie went into a bevy of problems because the director of that one wanted to go ahead and make this movie, but then, hey, Warner Brothers is dangling the Superman keys at me. I better go to Superman. So he kind of leaves halfway through. They bring a guy who's not connected to anything, being like, I'm going to try to make this work, and mandates about how you got to have this storyline and this storyline. Like we set up the Phoenix, but let's go ahead and stick in the Cure plot. But shouldn't the Cure plot be its own movie? Now we're going to go ahead and smash them both together. And that's when you got that one turning out the way that it did. Now, I think in all fairness, I think Derek would find Alien X3 more watchable than Alien 3 any day of the week.
Definitely. Even though there was like some issues I take with it, but it's still more competent. And
so here it is. Here's something I want to read to you. The number of cast and crew associated with the series, including Michael Biehn, James Cameron, and novelist Alan Foster, expressed frustration and disappointment with the film's story. Cameron regarded the decision to kill off the characters of Bishop, Newt, and Hicks a slap in the face to him and fans of the previous film. So Cameron wasn't a fan of that. Biehn, upon learning of Corporal Hicks' demise, demanded and received almost as much money for his photograph than he had been paid for his entire film Aliens. And Dean Foster, writer of the novelizations, called the death of Newt and Hicks an obscenity. However, Several cast members of 3, including Charles Dance, Ralph Brown, and editor Terry Rawlings, as well as would-be director Vincent Ward, the guy who got replaced, have defended the film, and in particular its director, suggesting that many of the film's problems were caused by the excessive studio interference, Fox's over-reliance on dubious test screenings, because there was a lot of test screenings, and the resulting post-production alterations that were made. According to Dance, the film was in a fantastic piece of work, and then the committee put the fingers in. So that's how Dr. Clemens saw it. He said that, yeah, we had something really special being made, and the committee said it needs to have this, take that out. And according to Dance, the film was, yeah, Ward later stated, I sort of took my hat off to David Fincher because I thought, you know what, you've entered something at a ridiculous stage, and that you've made anything even faintly coherent, well done. And Ralph Brown, 85, it could have well been walked out had Fox had their nerve and not screened it to a bunch of brain-dead teenagers in Southern California, and then actually followed their comments of, there's too many bald English guys in it, and all this other kind of nonsense. Oh man. Jesus. It was doomed no matter what if that was the type of audience they were getting. I think the biggest problem with Alien 3, besides that, is the fact that it had to follow in the shadow of such a remarkable sequel in Aliens, and the fact that he had so many guys take cracks at it. He had a guy himself say, listen, we gotta do something different, or the audience is not going to be there with it. And like I said, okay, I have to use the Krennic line for Rennie Harlan. We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close. Because imagine what the timeline would have been like had they gone with any of those other versions. I think we might have been on talking about Aliens 4, 5, and 6 throughout the 90s or whatever. But things turned out the way they did. Sigourney had top control on the product, and her biggest request was to die in it, and she got it done. So now that that's done, I'm pretty sure that closes the book on the Ripley character and the book on the Alien series as a whole. Right? Oh, yeah. At the wrap party, they made a joke about how, well, maybe they might be able to get some blood from the fingernails of Ripley and find a way to make another one and clone her or whatever. And at that point, we're going to be talking about next week's entry. So if Alien is the scary one, Aliens is the cool one, and Alien 3 is the sad one, then Resurrection's the weird one. There's no way around it. It is the strangest film of the entire series, and I love it for that reason. In fact, I think that's going to be another case where other people will be all like, oh, and I'm going, aw, at the same time. So that's a thing with me. I'm the guy that defends G98. I'm the guy that finds creatures that should be horrifying kind of cute when they come out in larval stages. That's just me. So Resurrection is just got a special niche in my heart. I don't know how you feel about Resurrection though.
It's got to be more entertaining than this.
Oh yeah, that is for sure. Say, if Alien 3 was too dour, then Resurrection's probably a little too funny, but maybe some funny is what we need right now. So there we are talking about Alien 3. I talked about how I feel about it. You could probably tell by my description of everything that I still have an appreciation for this film, even with its narrative missteps and the headaches it got on. David Fincher, after he finished this movie, said that they asked him if he'd ever direct again. He says, I think I'd rather get colon cancer than direct a film. Poor guy was so burned out. But thankfully, he was able to find a creative spark. New Line Cinema took a chance with him, and he ended up making his big, proper film debut with Seven, which is regarded as a classic. And he went on to do many great films. I've mentioned a lot of them already. Fight Club, Seven, The Game, Social Network, even The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and he still makes movies to this day. Only now recently has he opened up about Alien 3, because for a long time he couldn't even bring it up to him without him going like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, because after what he went through, I don't blame him. But it worked out for Fincher. A lot of the actors in these movies showed up to become fan favorites and other stuff, like Charles Dance in Game of Thrones as Tywin Lannister. Charles Dutton appearing in Mimic is a great movie with him. He's another version of his Dylan character. So everybody was able to still work after this. Pete Postlewaite ended up becoming the best Jurassic Park character ever in The Lost World, so it wasn't all bad. But, you think about what could have been, you think about what we had, and the struggle it took to get there. You either are fascinated or depressed by it, and I could tell where both of us sit in those type of camps right now. So I think Derek's feeling we probably spent more than enough time needed on this little misery pit. So is there anything else you want to bring up about this movie?
Nope.
All right, okay. Thank you for listening to me talk about your ear off about Alien 3, Derek. Uh, I think you're only doing it because this is me. Because if it was anybody else, it'd be all like, I even told them, AVPR or Alien 3, what do you want to do, y'all? Just give me the pulse rifle, man. I'll do it myself.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's, like I said, he doesn't hate this movie, but he can't bring himself to loathe it or love it. It's just a,
Ah.
it's just a void for him, man. It's a black hole that sucks out all hope. So, I don't know, like it says, if I had to put up this movie or Theatrical Justice League, I think he'd at least say at least the Theatrical Justice League has Gal Gadot in it. That's something to like. All right, but yep. Well, that's all I got on Alien 3. Thank you all for sitting through this with us. This is Johnny Cat 79, aka Chris, signing up, and my usual co-host Eric, aka Dark Neon.
Uh, yeah, I got nothing.
All right. Oh, but I not everyone dies. I remembered. Morse, the prisoner, survived at least. So, whoopty. The guy who says that they have no ice cream. That's my favorite line. Anytime me and my sister want to get ice cream, we're thinking about it, we keep starting the quote, and we have no electronics, no air conditioning, no rubbers, no women, no fucking ice cream. And we go, okay, we'll go with some ice cream. So there's that note. So I think I'll sign off on the final line. These are the last survivors of this movie. Signing off. All right, take care.